Good. So welcome to our third session. This is a continuation of the last week's session, and we're going to revolve around money and wealth. How to think about wealth, because that is one of the foundational elements of how we think about what constitutes a good world. Is that financial capital is not the only driver. And I shared some insights into the functioning of money, where it comes from, how is it created in its current design. And we went into the story of the city of Ghent, where Bernard Lietaer turned around the city with, or the part of the city with the illegal immigrants by introducing a new currency that was backed by people's dreams. And I'm actually not sure. We also talked about Wörgl in Austria, where the currency that was backed by the little bit of budget that the mayor had the interesting design feature that it had a negative interest rate, meaning if you keep it longer, it becomes worth less. Right? That's contrary to what's usually happening today, and that means that you increase the turnaround of your money in your economy, right? You make it go faster, which has some positive side effects, but it strips money from its other important function, or at least currently important function, which is store of value. And store of value and wealth are very, very closely connected. And also the idea of what actually constitutes wealth. And that's what we're going to revolve around today. My input is going to be very short, and the majority of our conversation should revolve around conversation and actual implementation of this. So all economic activity happens around making life worth living, trying to manage life, making life livable for you as an individual and your community. And somehow we got sidetracked through the design of our current currency system to think about economic systems in a different way, more in the terms of profit maximization. We talked about that, backed by fiat, etc. Now, if you look at your life, you will discover that there are other things that make you feel wealthy, or to turn it around, to make you feel not poor, right? You have friends, you might have some stuff, there might be plants or animals, you might know a lot, you might be rich in experience, you might have a host of cultural rituals and connection and participation that makes you. So all of these things could constitute elements of your wealth, because if you turn it around and you ask, what is poverty? It's not only the absence of money, right? Money for financial capital is just the maximum abstraction that can translate into almost anything. And that's why it's easy to point towards it to say that you're poor if you don't have it. But if you have a house, if you have food to eat, if you have friends, if you have all of these things, money becomes less important and you still can feel wealthy or be wealthy, right? So it comes down to where we started in the first session about the question of what is it actually that you want to do with your life? Who are you? Where do you stand? A description of the maximum well-being that you can imagine for yourself and or your community, right? If you can describe that properly, then you can start thinking about what does it need to get there? What are the inputs required to build this kind of world on the local, right? Hyper-local, you, your family, or your community. So one way to make this more measurable is we could use Maslow's 5 dimensions. So I call them dimensions and not a hierarchy, because there is no love without life and there's no life without love. Okay, so all of them are equally important, and just go through them: physiological needs, needs of safety and belonging, and now I'm forgetting them. But I'm gonna share a screen just now to get more into this. Just 1 second. So so we have physiological needs, safety needs, love and belonging, needs of esteem, self-actualization, right? And now what if we defined whatever we need here? What does physiological needs in a fulfilled life look for us as an individual or as a community? And once we've answered that question, we can start looking into what is it that we need to fulfill that. And we can code those inputs in different forms of capital. 8 to be exact, and those 8 were developed by Ethan Soloviev and his partner. His name escapes me right now. And about 10, 12 years ago, through a series of conversations with people in the permaculture culture, and they extracted from those conversations those 8 forms of capital. So financial capital, then material capital and living capital, spiritual, cultural, intellectual, social, and experiential capital. Okay. Now, if we code all of the inputs we need for to fulfill our physiological needs, we definitely need some material to build a shelter or have something to wear. We definitely need a salad or something to eat, so we need some living capital. With our friends, with knowledge and with experience, we can do more of that, right? So if our friends help us turn material into shelter, that's better. If we know how to grow living capital, we have more of it. And if we know from experience, if we've experienced how to turn that into food, then we can also do that better than just eating salad raw. If we have financial capital, we can buy most of that stuff, right? We're probably not the friends, but the rest. Now, you notice that these are on 3 layers. These layers are layers of abstraction. Without living capital or material capital, you will not be able to fulfill your physiological needs at all. You can do this a little bit better with those on the outer layer, right? And on the very abstract level, yes, you could use financial capital to get much of this solved. Now, this gives you a way to valuate these forms of capital in terms of their relative valuation. If you then turn that into a calculation, what you will discover is there is some relative relevance of these forms of capital. So in this specific setup, which is mine, financial capital contributes 8.4% to a good life. Yeah. And social capital is, I think, the strongest. Right? That's why we're doing things together. That's why people write books like Never Eat Alone. Right? Because it's never about the money. It's about the people that you come together with to do things. Right? This gives you an insight. Now, what you can do with this is you can look at it for your own perspective. You can look at it for the perspective of your community. And you can also look at it from the perspective of the current state or your desired state. And so now it becomes measurable. Now you can see, where do you want to go? Right? Maybe you're one of these poor people who only have money, but you need friends and you need culture, right? Now you can start working on it, because you can see that only if there's a certain balance between your forms of capital, you actually become wealthy. You actually can live a rich life. And this can give you the information to start moving. And this can also give you the information of the actual health of your community, and how to and what to change and what to do within your community. So with that, I think my thoughts on this topic are more or less coming to an end, and we can open it for a conversation. What are your thoughts? Challenges, feedback, questions? Diana, you unmuted yourself.
Thank you so much for sharing, first of all. I mean, this is just one idea. It's just one theory amongst many, many others. So nevertheless, I find it particularly helpful. And I also think that Catherine might agree, if we enter a new community and where this community actually stands at the moment in terms of what do we want to achieve with Motherland. I think this could be a very, very helpful tool. I'm super, super curious. Why is it exactly these like 8 forms of capital? And how do you, I mean, how do you identify where you or your community is the current state? How are you going to do that? Do you ask questions? Do you observe? How are you doing it? I mean, this example we had was about yourself, right? And your family.
Yeah.
So this would be very interesting.
So there are multiple questions in there. So the first one is to acknowledge that there are 3 different types of currency within these 8. One is quantifiable and you can freely define it. That's financial capital. You probably will not freely define it because you're embedded in a larger economy that uses a predefined financial capital form, but that's the one form you can actually freely define completely. Then you have 2 other quantifiable forms. These are material and living capital. And you can count how many stones you have. You can count how many sheep you have, all of that. And then you have 5 inherently subjective, non-quantifiable, only qualitatively describable forms of capital. And this represents a totally different understanding of capital itself, right? Because now all you can do is you can declare yourself rich or poor or somewhere in between on one of these levels, right? So, for example, I am probably the poorest in my family when it comes to cultural capital because I have least connection and knowledge about rituals and tradition, right? And that helps me open the space for learning that. Now, how does that all happen? It's a conversation. And it's a conversation first about where do we stand? Where do we actually want to go to? And then how do we encode that in these forms of capital on a subjective level, right? We can talk about that. We can say, are we rich in culture or are we not? And then we have to talk about it as a community. Because there's no way to measure this. We can just feel it. It is extremely powerful to give people who have the sense that they might be poor because they don't have financial capital, a new sense of that they actually aren't that poor. Right? This increases confidence. And it's therefore extremely powerful and helpful. Right? That's what you also sensed. Where does it come from? Well, I haven't been part of that process, right? So I just know it from Ethan Soloviev and his partner, but they are deeply embedded in the permaculture movement. And they want to understand how to measure things like wealth within that community, right? How do you actually look at life? And so they ran workshops and conversations, as I said, 10, 12 years ago. And these 8 forums emerged out of those, right? They found them, they didn't invent them. And they're just describing them. So
I would just like to interrupt you for a second. Catherine, I just have one question. Have you ever heard about the concept of permaculture?
The concept of?
Permaculture. Permaculture.
No. Kindly tell me more about it.
Okay. So
very, very good point. Yeah. Do you want to elaborate, Diana?
No, you please. I mean, I really love permaculture, and I think it just opens a totally new world to everybody on this planet. It would be amazing if you could just explain it very.
So I can.
Or you can, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hi.
So until Sebastian comes back, I just want to say one sentence about this, and then Sebastian can elaborate.
Yeah.
And permaculture is very often associated with agriculture, but it's much beyond that. It is actually a notion of how to design systems such that they are inherently balanced in themselves. And there's a whole school about how to do that in different parts of life. But Sebastian can talk about that much better than I can.
So as you said, so I think it's an approach that sets the symbiosis between humans and nature and agriculture and all the plants into a flourishing relationship. Yeah, and that says, okay, we can all thrive. Yeah, when the nature around us thrive. And yes, we do agriculture because we have to feed ourselves, but we can do it in a way that all the species that we have, for example, in a vegetable garden, yeah, are set up in a way that they form a large symbiosis. Yeah, because you have plants that you can plant directly to each other, and they don't like each other. Yeah, so then they are not thriving. Both of them are not. Yeah, and you have this rotation, and you plant certain crops next to others, and you have a system how you set up the whole garden. Yeah, to create based on this symbiosis of all the species, a resilient and anti-fragile system that that strengthen itself within this symbiosis. And as Thomas said, it's going even beyond that, yeah, because it sees also humans as part of this symbiosis, yeah, and also how the humans interact and belong to each other, yeah. So it's really a holistic approach of seeing such a ecosystem of plants and animals and humans all together. Yeah, and it's not about, for example, exploiting human labor. Yeah, in a garden, it's also about making humans thrive by doing the labor and getting then something back from nature. And what's so fantastic about that? Yeah, that you really build resilient and also anti-fragile towards climate change, small ecosystems, yeah, that are highly productive, yeah, and you don't need any inputs, yeah, like fertilizers, natural fertilizers, because of the symbiosis with animals, yeah, that play an important role, but no artificial fertilizers and any artificial pest control. The pest control is done by the ecosystem, so to say, because you have resilient and strong plants, yeah, with a good immune system itself, yeah, and some of the plants take care of the other plants and the pest control, yeah, and this is done actually by indigenous cultures, yeah, and we are now re-exploring that, yeah, and there are large movements starting in Europe, yeah, to bring this kind of agriculture, for example, to little cities, yeah, that they start growing their food within a city, and then the people are also incorporate in this whole process, etc. Yeah, and so I think this is a very good model to apply, for example, also in a community. And now my girl needs my help, and I'm back right away.
And
There's also just one thing. You know, basically almost the entire country of Rwanda got rebuilt on the principles of permaculture. If you look at Rwanda nowadays, you can see even all the smallholder farmers, all of their small farms and pieces of land, they follow very, very strict permaculture rules. And they're really thriving, so they can feed themselves. And I think it's an amazing example because Rwanda is not far, not so far from Kenya at least. So, and what I think we would definitely share some material amongst each other, so that you can also see it, Catherine. It's very powerful.
Yeah, I think it's
Go ahead.
I think it's a very nice concept. Like I said in our previous meeting, it's very sad to see that people are starving and people, die of hunger, and these are things that can easily be avoided. In Kenya right now, we are lucky to have a president that is an agriculturalist. And when he came to power, realized that because there are these places like in Mombasa County, in the coast region, there's a part that people are really dying of hunger, starvation, and then there's the northern part of Kenya. So what he did was, instead of, okay, in as much as per now, we can give you food, but then what about the long-term solution? So the first thing he did, actually the first week, he was sworn in, I think about a month ago. But the first week, the first thing he did was to bring in fertilizers so that, and distribute to people. I think by the time he was coming to power, fertilizers they were very expensive. So he slashed the amount with almost a half. And those ones, the people that cannot afford it, they were given free fertilizer. So I think, yeah, it's a very nice concept, and it's just like I said, it's sad to see that someone can die of hunger, but they have a land. They can provide the labor, they can get food. So I think it's a very nice concept.
Yeah, and it's very beneficiary for everyone. Yeah, so if you create a thriving ecosystem that nourishes you, and without having the need for expensive inputs, yeah, and then you're driving down the cost. And it's not just that you say, okay, then we harvest way less or so. Yeah, it becomes more resilient, so you don't have the volatility in such an ecosystem that you would have in a more like monoculture system, and you're not taking care of this reciprocity of the ecosystem. But it also shows, yeah, and it's proven that it's more productive. Yeah, maybe you get less of one crop because you have so many crops. Yeah, but in total, the amount of calories and nourishing ingredients, yeah, like micronutrients, etc., yeah, you get way more out of a hectare of land by doing that than with the conventional method. And it's even better, yeah, because you're not building your food, yeah, and cutting future harvests for a bigger harvest today, yeah, because if you apply artificial fertilizers and you're not taking care of the humus and the water cycles, etc., you can have good harvests, yeah, for maybe a couple of years, but then the ecosystem degrades. Yeah, and if it started to degrading, you need more and more and more fertilizers, which make things even worse. Yeah, because the natural ecosystem is not working anymore. Yeah, and that's why this permaculture approach is actually, especially in a context like the people in your community, probably is, especially when it comes to self-sufficiency. Yeah, it's a very important concept. Yeah, because it lowers the dependency, and it's an investment not only into today's harvest or this year's harvest, but into the harvest for your kids and grandchildren.
There's an important word that Sebastian said earlier that I'd also like to highlight and elaborate on, which is anti-fragility. Anti-fragility is a term coined by Nassim Taleb, author of several books, very interesting person. And you can think about it easily in terms of materials. So there are some materials that are brittle. Let's say porcelain. If you drop a bowl of porcelain, it'll break, and it'll be very, very hard to put it back together, and it'll definitely not be better afterwards. There's some materials that are flexible. right? They might or might not even bounce back in shape. So if that ball that you're dropping is of a very thin metal, it's will have some damage, but it'll still be usable, and you can somehow push it back into the rough shape. Or you have a plastic or rubber thing that falls down and it bounces immediately back into shape. Now, an anti-fragile ball would become better as it grows back, right? So you drop it, it breaks, and it learns from that injury. So it becomes stronger, right? And that's very much at the core of everything Sebastian was talking about, that the system that you're thinking about, it actually learns from every negative input, right? It grows back stronger. That's the core of anti-fragility.
Yeah, and it says that we need certain amount of stress, and that's not only for human beings, but also that's for nature. So stress is not a bad thing. Yeah, it makes us anti-fragile. So if you imagine a kid, you're growing a kid in a very, very protected environment. Yeah, and the kid is not allowed to go out on the streets, for example. Yeah, and you protect it as good as you can, which we try to do as parents. Yeah, but if the kid the first time is alone on the street and it never learned how to deal with all the risks that you're facing, yeah, in the real life, so to say, the kid will not be able to handle it because it has not learned it. Yeah, you need to send it out and say, okay, go on the other side on the street and buy some bread. Yeah, and if you even feel as a parent, you feel, oh, this is a risky thing, I don't know if my kid can do that. Yeah, but only if you do it, your kid will grow, yeah, and will learn. And so that means overprotection, yeah, is not a good thing. And this is especially, and you are way more anti-fragile than we are in the global north, yeah, where we are overprotecting and try to feel comfortable all the time, and we are not able to deal with certain situations that cause stress within our lives. Yeah, and this theory says it's a good thing. Yeah, because it makes you anti-fragile. Because if you are confronted with such a situation, you're able to deal with it. And this is not only true for individuals, it's true for communities, and it's also true for the nature you're interacting with.
That's a lot again, right? There was another part of Diana's question that I'd like to address, which is how do you have that conversation for what do we actually want to live in the community? And of course, one way is to employ the 7 questions lucid framework, but that's heavyweight, right? It even compared to others, it's super lightweight, but it's still heavyweight if you want to bring that into community. What's much easier to open that conversation is to have a dinner and then ask everybody the question, how do you want to be seen by your loved ones at the end of your life? Right? And make that the center of the conversation, and make sure that if you are the first person, or whoever is the first person to describe that, you go really deep and you make yourself vulnerable, because that will dictate the quality of the rest of the conversation. And if you do that, then people will very quickly open up and you will have enormous conversations. And that's an opening for having that talk about A, that's usually very similar, and people are not that different. And B, why don't we start building for that today? Right. So that's the kind of conversation you can start having around that. Very useful tool. Catherine, how are you feeling?
I'm trying to process. I'm processing all this. It's a bit a lot and very interesting. Yeah. So, I also wanted to add a little bit on what Diana had mentioned earlier. Like, how do we find out what the community has? Do we ask them or do we just observe? I think both can work. You ask, and you can just be there and spend some time with them and just observe how these people are, how they are working, how they're acting, so that you can really get exactly what you want. When you ask, they can lie. They can tell you what you want to hear. So, but when you spend time with these people and live with them, you realize that you'll get a lot that is very accurate, rather than asking. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
Just one comment. So so what we are telling you, Catherine, right now, so it took us years, yeah, to explore and connect the dots. Yeah, so it's absolutely clear that you will need to take your time, and we have a lot of respect, yeah, for is you need to translate it into your context, yeah, and make decisions. Okay, what is the right thing to communicate and how to put things together, yeah. So and then that's the I have tremendous respect for that, yeah. I think that's something is not easy to do, yeah, but that should be also part of our conversations and our progress, that if you start thinking about that, how to put that together, yeah, in the context, okay, how to make such a community self-sufficient and self-reliant, yeah, what are the concepts that are not only applicable, but they're also communicatable, so to say, yeah. And I think that's also something where we, yeah, are super keen to learn, yeah, and then see where we stand, yeah. And this is also what the pilot for, where we are in 6 months' time, yeah. That's part of the journey, yeah. But therefore it's important that we have the time to have this kind of conversations, yeah, that you can make your own sense making in context of your reality and the reality of the people, yeah. So there is no expectation that you say, okay, if you tell me this and that, I comply 100%, yeah, and I tell that to my people. This is not our expectation. It's the opposite, yeah.
I want to double down on that by saying that whatever we say, even if we say that with intensity, which we both tend to do, there's no truth claim, right? We don't claim to know any truth. So what we acknowledge that what we're trying to do is come to the best possible version of the truth that we understand right now. But that we're always open to understanding more and changing our understanding, right? But as Sebastian said, there's years of thinking and experiencing behind that. That's why we do this with so much intensity. But that does not mean that we're not totally open to learning. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think there's so much more capital out there, definitely. Well, what I think will be really interesting once we are in touch with the farmers and we have some ideas about their challenges. I believe it's very important then to really sit down and then to become really, really precise what could be the positive outcome of the pilot. And to really envision this, whatever this is, if it's market access, if it's more avocados, if it's trust, is it a big whatever celebration with everybody? I think that's very important, that we really sit down and then do our homework.
Yeah, that openness is key in every aspect, right?
Yeah.
I like there's a a famous software engineer and now investor, Mark Andreessen. Do you know Firefox, the browser? Yeah. So Mark Andreessen wrote the basic code for that. It was called Mosaic. It's now part of Mozilla and then Firefox. And he is one of the biggest VCs in Silicon Valley at the moment. And his, I don't know if it still says that, but his bio on Twitter says, strong views weakly held. Right? This means a strong openness for learning, but also a lot of learning accumulated. And so that's the notion with which we go into any conversation and any process. So we think we know some stuff, but we also know that we don't know, and that we will have to learn.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there is, in the past, I was always confronted with some very interesting stereotype people from the north have about people from this global south. And it was really all of my friends, when they traveled to, let's say, developing countries. I don't even like this expression, They always said, yeah, the people have nothing, but they are so happy. And I got always so angry about it, because from my experience, people who have no access to capital and to basic infrastructure, they're not happy, So at least that's the story, how I perceived it, and potentially most of the people I have worked with, because they just lived below the existential line, So they were suffering. And I've always found it so arrogant from white people saying, yeah, but they are so happy. It's a very old stereotype, it's hundreds of years old. And I still struggle with this, that people who have less are happier than people who have more. It's an interesting equation, and now coming with this Maslow's, this pyramid, the thing we have explained, and also the permaculture capital. It's very interesting. I'm not so sure if it's really true. Having food on the table is existential. If you don't have this, you are absolutely not happy, because you're in constant struggle for everything. It dominates many, many people's lives on this planet, unfortunately. And then I would start getting really offensive if somebody comes in, yeah, but you have a family, you have friends, you have strong culture at the end of the day, but you still struggle. I get emotional about it. So, because it reminds me of some confrontations I had in the past with people really glorifying at the end of the day poverty, So I don't know. I'm still thinking about it and processing it.
So there's another concept of donut economics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. where it says, and I think that's also true for this 8 forms of capital.
Mhm.
Yeah, you need a certain threshold. Yeah, and to have a good life. And
Yeah.
it's sure, if you don't have anything to eat, you don't have shelter, you're living in an environment where you are constantly under threat. Yeah, by, I don't know, wildlife and nature, etc. Yeah, so maybe some capital forms you are really in a good threshold. Yeah,
Mhm.
but on the other, you're really at risk. Yeah, and that's it's good to have some of those stresses and being remembered that it's not for granted. Yeah, but it's also good to get rid of some of those so that you can take care of other things as well.
Mhm.
And so, but if we are overshooting, yeah, and I give you an example, and I was really shocked from a young Kenyan entrepreneur who is setting up a platform to support Kenyan families with healthcare workers, yeah, to help their sick um, family members, yeah, because we see a rise in societal illnesses, yeah, like high blood pressure, like cancer, like diabetes, and so on and so forth. That is now striking countries like Kenya, yeah, and it's on a high rise. And this is because we bring, so to say, our culture, highly processed food and things like that, that are promising some of those capital needs, that it's all gifted and granted. We don't have to think about that anymore. And it feels good and it feels like wealth, but it creates the opposite on another form of capital, yeah, which is being healthy, yeah, and don't have to worry about certain health conditions. Yeah, maybe you don't have to worry to be to go hungry to bed, yeah, but you actually you ate the wrong things, and those are making you sick, and this is really some kind of a backslash. Yeah, and if you do the full calculation, probably this is so good, because the people now need to spend their money. Yeah, they put aside for their pension, yeah, and spend it now for their relatives, because they're getting all kinds of diseases. There weren't there, let's say, 10 years before. Yeah, and this we need to, because I think this makes clear this systemic of developing and getting access to things that were inaccessible before, but staying in this balance of not rushing too much into one direction. Yeah, and when you look how big our health system in Germany is, yeah, and just to give you one number, yeah, in the German health system we have 20 billion euros of cost for just the diabetes type 2 in our system per year. 20 billion. Yeah, this is a third of the true cost for the whole society that we have annually on such a disease that is 100% the result of our nourishment and what we eat. Yeah. So, and this is costs in the system, and you need to able to afford that. And as we are so super rich, we say, yeah, we can afford that. Yeah, having this kind of disease. Yeah, but this is really a problem for a country like Kenya. Yeah, because you don't have this system, and you can put that. And that's why, going back to permaculture, yeah, having something that nourishes you well, keeps you healthy and sane, yeah, is, maybe you don't have the everything at hand, so like we do, but probably from a talking about this capital again, it's better. Yeah, and now the ones that are able to afford it here in Europe, they go to the farmers market and buy the stuff that is growing in a permaculture garden in in their wider neighborhood, so to say, yeah, and pay a lot of money for that because we are conscious, yeah, and you are closer to that than we are here, yeah. And so that's why bringing this now into the right direction, yeah, with such a project as well, is an important thing to do, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I wanted to second Diana, like the way people, the notion that people have in that way, saying that we don't have but we are happy. And you find that this is some of the things that make people really exploit Africans and the developing country. Like, for instance, personally, I grew up in Kibera slums. Probably you've heard of it. It's one of the largest slums in Kenya. And you know, the challenges and everything that people go through, and you find that every child, including me, you grew up there and you fight very terribly to get out of this place, you know. In as much as you are happy and you are enjoying, and it's not like you're complaining, but deep down, you have this war inside you that I don't want my life to end here. You see, so in as much as, yeah, some people from outside won't want to see that. They'll come, they take photos of us, even if we were little, in the mud and in the sewers, and you know, they exploit us, even our own. You see, they take advantage of that. But saying that people are always comfortable with where they are and they're happy, and you as a person, you know, if you are put in that situation, you won't be happy. It means that someone is not happy. It's only the condition and the situation. And you find that in as much as they won't say, but they really fight, you know, not to be in that situation. When you look at, for example, here in Kenya, politics is all about tribe. And in Kenya, we have like 50 ethnic groups. So a tribe that is in power, if the other tribes that were not affiliated with this tribe, you find that those regions don't really get developments. You find that things like infrastructure, things like projects, things that like ministry, they don't really go to that side. And right at the moment, Siaya County is unfortunately one of those you know, disadvantaged community right now. And those are things that we know about when you go to vote, and you know that if this person wins, you know, it's over with us. So, you know, things like the farmer culture now, they come in handy, because you know very well that even getting a job, a parastatal job, even getting a job in the government, even getting a job anywhere is going to be impossible for the next 10 years. I'm speaking about 10 years. And those are things that happen. So you find that whatever project that even started in those sites, even building roads, whatever, they literally stop. Yeah, because you did not support me in my political journey. You did not support me. So those are things that are there. So you find that because these people, they have land, they have, the rain is there, at least they have the resources, they have the output. So it's just a matter of, you know, coming in handy and helping them, because when these are people that depend mostly on agriculture. For example, you know, the food, you know, taking the children to school, their survival, it all depends on agriculture. So you find that in as much as they don't have favor with the government, but then projects like Motherland can really help them. Yeah, can really help people, so that in as much as you can't get that job, and it's a dream that has gone for 10 years, and it's really something that is really a problem in our country. Tribalism, it's very bad. So you find that with the concept like this, it can really, really help people out. Yeah, so it's just a matter of working together and helping the communities to help themselves and thrive. Like, in as much as, yes, we need this government, we need to work with the government, but because they can't really help you, because they can't really even give you a job, because you did not support me, now at least I can farm for myself. I can, plant, I can harvest, I can sell my harvest, I can, my life can continue irregardless. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you so much, definitely. So we have to jump on another call now in 2 minutes, right?
Yeah.
With the GIZ, yeah, Kathleen. I think we continue our conversation later, right? Yeah. Catherine and I have a little working group, so
Cool.
we always discuss the load of new knowledge and approaches, and we work on them and learn with each other and from each other, which is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I highly appreciate what you just said. Yeah, and because it's for you, for us, it's really about learning and developing also this feeling, for you, and only if you share this specificity of your environment and the people, we can start translating what we see, what is really rough, and then making the decisions where to focus on. Because we cannot change everything by that. What's important, and this is only possible because we have you, to identify, so to say, the spot where we can put in the lever and start turning the wheel. And this is very important, because otherwise we stick it somewhere and we try and it's too big, and then we are going to fail. And that's why.
And most importantly, translate our abstract European white thinking and doing into something that's actually fitting and appropriate, right? So you understand what we mean, and we cannot express it in any better form. So we need to learn from you how to express it better, and you to bring that into the community in a form that we all understand is the same form. Okay, really need to hop now. Somebody's waiting for us.
Yeah.
The call.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.